Hi guys, episode 5, Genesis chapter 15. So verse 1 says, God appeared to Abram in a vision and said, Abram, don't be afraid, I'm your reward, I'm your shield, I'm your very great reward. And Abram says, okay, thanks Lord, but all this stuff you're going to give me, all the land, all the possessions, it's all going to go to my servant Eliezer. I don't have any children. You haven't given me any children. I want children. And God says to him in verse 14, this man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. And God took him outside, and God said to him, look up at the stars. Look up at the sky and count the stars. Look, that's the key word we're looking at today. Look. They say seeing is believing, right? And in the Bible, in the New Testament, Jesus Christ said, blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. However, sometimes or many times we need a vision. We need something to see, to be able to hang on and have faith and hold on to the promise that God has given us. So in this case, for example, God had promised, that Abraham was going to have a child, right, and many children. He's going to be the father of many nations. He's going to be great. But Abraham didn't have any children, and Abraham was starting to get worried and starting to say, God, who's going to inherit all this stuff? So God had to show him something as a symbol. So God said, count the stars. If you can count them, that's how many your children are going to be. Verse 6, and Abraham believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. He believed God after God had told him to look. That looking at the stars, having that vision with God renewed his faith. In fact, this was actually the first time that Abraham had really spoken to God about wanting a son, to inherit his property. If you look at if you go back to chapter 13, for example, after Lot left, God said, look, north, south, east, and west, as far as your eyes can see. As much of the land that your eyes can see, I've given it to you and your descendants. Again, seeing, and in fact, later on in that chapter, I believe, God told him to go and walk the length and the breadth of the land. All these things were just to build his faith, to keep him believing, keep him trusting in God. So sometimes having something to look at, so like the stars, for example, in Abraham's case, or the land, it serves as a point of reference to what God has promised us. So when Abraham was walking, along the length and the breadth of the land, it was building his faith. First of all, he knew the demarcations of the land that God had given him, so that, it's good to know what's yours and what's not yours. And it just prepared him for the magnitude and, the greatness of what God had in store for him in terms of how many children, how many descendants he was going to have. If all that land was going to be his, then it had to be filled with children, so it just painted a picture of the promise that God had given him. And likewise with the stars as well, each time, I presume when he got discouraged, he would go outside and look up at the stars and the night sky, and his faith would be, renewed. His faith would be fired up to say, God said that, that's how many my children are going to be. And our prayer is that, God would give us visions. God would give us something to hold on to say, right, this is what I'm going to do for you. And God will open our eyes to be able to see, the wondrous things that He has in store for us. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.